a pile of clothes on the floor, and out came this boot and it hit me.
He felt offended for me saying to him I needed more space.
I would like to say that I couldn't care less.
Football isn't just about goals, trophies, or tactics. It's about power. And nowhere is that power more dangerous, more explosive, and more personal than between the player and the manager. Because when the superstar ego meets the authoritarian mastermind, something always breaks. Sometimes a dressing room, sometimes a dynasty, sometimes even a career. This is the story of football's biggest feuds, the moments when football's kings turned on each other, from Beckham's flying boot to Mourinho's psychological warfare, from Zlatan's rebellion to Ronaldo's ultimate betrayal. These are the battles that shaped the game. If you love deep football storytelling, the scandals, the chaos, and the drama behind the glory, then hit that like button and subscribe right now, because today we're diving into the unholy alliance that defines football's most unforgettable rivalries. For over 2 decades, Sir Alex Ferguson didn't just manage Manchester United, he ruled it. Every player, every coach, and every journalist knew one thing: no one, no matter how talented, was bigger than the club. Ferguson's authority wasn't up for debate. It was law. He built his empire on loyalty, fear, and discipline. Break the code and you were gone. Simple as that. And for all his brilliance, Ferguson's reign was also defined by war, by 3 legendary fallouts that showed exactly how ruthless his control really was. First up is Ferguson versus Beckham. It's one of football's most replayed myths. February 2003, United lose 2-0 to Arsenal in the FA Cup, and an angry Ferguson launches a football boot across the dressing room, hitting David Beckham right above the eye. But here's what really happened. Assistant Carlos Queiroz later explained the truth. Ferguson did kick the boot, but it ricocheted off a table before smacking Beckham. It wasn't a sniper shot of rage, but the symbolism was perfect, because by then, the real battle wasn't physical, it was philosophical. Beckham wasn't just a footballer anymore, he was a brand, a global celebrity married to a pop icon, with more camera flashes around him than Ferguson could ever control. To Ferguson, that was poison. Football came first, always. And Beckham, with his haircuts, fashion deals, and global fame, had become a threat to that culture. So the boot became a message. Whether it was a ricochet or not, Ferguson let the myth live. The myth that he'd literally hit his biggest star, because that myth kept every other player in line. A few months later, Beckham was gone, sold to Real Madrid for £30 million, and Ferguson had made his point. No player, not even the most famous one in the world, was untouchable. Next up is Ferguson versus Roy Keane. If Beckham's feud was about celebrity, Roy Keane's was about standards. Pure, ruthless standards. Keane wasn't just United's captain, he was their enforcer. But by 2005, he felt that things were slipping. Players getting comfortable, standards dropping, and maybe even Ferguson losing his edge. Then came the infamous MUTV interview. Keane tore into his own teammates on camera, brutally, personally taking names. Ferguson and Carlos Queiroz, along with the entire squad, saw the clip, and the dressing room detonated. Keane went after everyone, including Ferguson himself, and in that moment, Ferguson made the most ruthless decision of his career. Within 2 weeks, he terminated the captain's contract on the spot. It didn't matter that Keane was the heartbeat of the team, the leader who dragged United through battles. He was gone, paid off to leave immediately. Ferguson sacrificed his most loyal soldier to save his dressing room. Because in this world, authority was sacred. You could bleed for him, but you could never question him. Now, let's look at Ferguson versus Ruud van Nistelrooy. If Keane's exit was about standards, Van Nistelrooy's was about power. By 2006, Ruud van Nistelrooy had been one of Ferguson's most lethal strikers, over 150 goals in just 5 seasons. But beneath the numbers, tension was brewing. Ferguson's vision for United was shifting towards speed and fluidity, built around a young Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney. and Van Nistelrooy's old-school penalty box style no longer fit his plan. The Dutchman grew frustrated at being benched for key matches, including the League Cup final, and his temper eventually boiled over in training, where he reportedly insulted Ronaldo and clashed with him. That was the final straw. Ferguson sent him home, and by summer, Van Nistelrooy was gone, sold to Real Madrid. It was another ruthless reminder that at Manchester United, no matter how many goals you scored, Ferguson's authority always came first. If you thought I'm done talking about Sir Alex, I'm not. Let's look at Ferguson versus Jaap Stam. Not every feud ends in fireworks. Some end in silence, like Jaap Stam's. In 2001, just after publishing his memoir Head-to-Head, Stam revealed private details about how Ferguson had approached him to join United, and that was done without PSV's permission. To Ferguson, that single allegation was complete betrayal. Publicly, he claimed Stam was sold to Lazio because of a dip in form, but the timing said otherwise. Stam was gone almost overnight. Years later, Ferguson admitted it was one of his biggest regrets, but it revealed his core belief. Loyalty came above all else. If you crossed that invisible line, you didn't get a warning. You got a transfer. That was the Ferguson doctrine: control, loyalty, obedience. And if it came down to the team or the star, he'd always choose the team. If Ferguson ruled through loyalty and control, Jose Mourinho ruled through chaos. Mourinho's entire career is built on conflict, the siege mentality, the us against the world philosophy. But the same fire that wins him trophies always ends up burning his relationships to the ground. Mourinho doesn't just feud with players. He tests them, publicly, brutally, and intentionally. He wants soldiers, not artists, and when someone doesn't fit his system, they become his next target. With that being said, let's look at Mourinho versus Mkhitaryan. Henrik Mkhitaryan's time under Mourinho at Manchester United is the perfect example of psychological warfare disguised as management. Mkhitaryan was a creative playmaker, inventive, spontaneous, attacking. Mourinho wanted something else: structure, discipline, defensive responsibility. The result was inevitable. Mourinho benched him and criticized him, but it didn't just stop there. Following Mkhitaryan's heated confrontation after 2 years of relentless criticism, Mourinho would message him every day on WhatsApp and would tell him, "Mickey, please go away so I can get Alexis," and eventually was able to discard him. Not just because he hated him personally, but because he needed to make a statement. Every exile under Mourinho is a message to the rest: follow orders or you'll be next. Mkhitaryan didn't survive that system, but Mourinho did not care. He wasn't managing individuals, he was managing obedience. And that same obedience is what caused Mourinho versus Pogba. But Mourinho met his match in Paul Pogba. This was no ordinary player. Pogba was a global brand, a social media icon, and a marketing goldmine, the perfect face of modern football. And Mourinho, he was old-school discipline, crafting his own reality for his players to live by. The relationship was doomed from the very start. Mourinho stripped Pogba of the vice-captaincy, then humiliated him with public criticism. Pogba hit back online, subtly mocking his manager, feeding the tabloids, and turning the feud into a global circus. The moment that defined it came on video, a viral clip from training showing a tense standoff between the two, Mourinho glaring and Pogba smirking. The whole world was watching. It was like Ferguson-era conflict, but in the age of Instagram, and Mourinho was losing. United's hierarchy sided with the player, not the manager. Pogba stayed. Mourinho was sacked. The era of the manager's absolute power was cracking, and social media had turned private feuds into public theater. Moving on, let's talk about star power. If there's one player who symbolizes the evolution of power in football, it's Cristiano Ronaldo. Once the obedient prodigy under Ferguson's rule, later the untouchable megastar. By the time he returned to Manchester United in 2021, Ronaldo wasn't just a player. He was the brand, the spectacle, and the story. And that made him unmanageable. Let's talk about Rafa Benítez versus Ronaldo. When Rafa Benítez arrived at Real Madrid in 2015, he brought a scientific, highly structured approach. He wanted to control every detail, positioning, movement, and even how Ronaldo was taking his free kicks. Ronaldo, already one of the greatest players in history, felt insulted. He didn't need tactical lectures, least of all from a manager he did not respect. The tension was immediate and unstoppable. Ronaldo made it clear. He didn't trust Benitez. He didn't believe in him. And with the player holding far more power in the media and the dressing room, the outcome was written before it even began. Within months, Benitez was gone. Ronaldo had won the war. It was proof of a new football order. The superstar could now outlast the manager. On the contrary, Ronaldo versus Erik ten Hag did not end similarly. Years later, when Ronaldo's power collided with Erik ten Hag, the outcome flipped completely. By 2022, ten Hag was rebuilding Manchester United with one philosophy: discipline above all. Ronaldo was benched for big games and was furious. He started walking off before full time, publicly defying orders, and making his unhappiness very clear. Then came the Piers Morgan interview, the bombshell, Ronaldo telling the world he had no respect for Erik ten Hag. That was it. The bridge burned in public view. Ten Hag made a brutal decision: discipline over reputation. The club backed him. Ronaldo's contract was terminated. It was a seismic moment, a global icon humbled by structure. For the first time, the manager won the battle against the biggest name in football. But it also revealed how player dissent had evolved. Unlike Ferguson's private feuds, Ronaldo's rebellion was performed for the world, through interviews, cameras, and social media. Modern football had made the battlefield public. Now, let's look back a little bit and go to Zlatan versus Guardiola. In 2009, Pep Guardiola's Barcelona was football perfection, precision, possession, poetry. And then into that system walked Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the definition of chaos. Guardiola demanded silence, obedience, and tactical precision. Zlatan demanded freedom and volume. It was a doomed experiment from day one. Zlatan later described Pep's system as, "You bought a Ferrari, but you drive it like a Fiat." Their relationship collapsed into a heated confrontation until Zlatan was benched, loaned, and then sold. The message was very clear. Guardiola's system did not serve stars. Stars served his system. And if you couldn't fit into that structure, you'd be replaced by someone who could. It was the same principle as Ferguson, just executed with icy silence instead of fiery boots. Some feuds don't just break clubs, they break nations. That is the case with Roy Keane versus Mick McCarthy. In 2002, Ireland's captain Roy Keane exploded on manager Mick McCarthy during World Cup preparations in Saipan. Keane accused the Irish FA of amateurism, poor facilities, bad organization, and no professionalism. Then came the team meeting. Keane unleashed a verbal hurricane, calling out McCarthy in front of the entire squad. It went nuclear. McCarthy sent him home immediately. Ireland's best player at the time gone on the eve of the World Cup. It divided a nation. Half saw Keane as a hero demanding standards. The other half saw him as a traitor who'd abandoned his team. But for McCarthy, the choice was simple. Authority had to survive, even if it meant losing the team's captain. Lastly, some feuds are tragic because they come from love. That was the case with Mancini versus Balotelli. Roberto Mancini loved Mario Balotelli like a son. He'd managed him at Inter Milan, then brought him to Manchester City, always trying to protect him, to guide him, and to unlock his brilliance. But Balotelli was uncontrollable, late to training, red cards, fights, fireworks, and chaos. The breaking point came in 2013, a training ground scuffle that went viral, Mancini grabbing Balotelli by the bib, screaming in frustration. That was the end. Even the man who defended him the longest had finally lost his patience. Balotelli was sold soon after. Mancini admitted it broke his heart. But again, the lesson was the same. Talent means nothing without obedience. There are countless others, each one that serves as a reminder that ego never sleeps in football. Filippo Inzaghi clashed with Marcelo Lippi at Juventus over playing time, leading to his move to AC Milan where he thrived. Ruud Gullit, once the rebellious star, became a manager and found himself in the opposite role, feuding with Alan Shearer at Newcastle in a cruel twist of irony. It's a cycle that never ends. The stars who fight authority eventually become the ones who have to enforce it. So who really wins these wars? The answer is complicated. Managers like Ferguson usually emerge victorious. Beckham sold, Keane released, Stam gone, and the institution survives. But the cost? Losing world-class players, and sometimes your own humanity. Mourinho wins the short-term battles, but the explosions always come back to destroy him. Guardiola wins by purity, no compromise, no emotion. Ten Hag proved that even in the modern age, structure can still triumph over celebrity. But there's another truth. Even when players lose, they often win their narrative. Beckham became a global icon, Keane became a cult hero, Pogba got the spotlight, and Ronaldo got his freedom. Every feud, whether win or lose, shapes legacies and redraws the line between power and obedience in football. From Ferguson's flying boot to Ronaldo's no-respect interview, these stories all teach the same lesson. Football is a constant tug-of-war between individual brilliance and collective control. Managers build empires, players tear them down, and somewhere in between lies the truth of what makes this sport so human. If you enjoyed this deep dive into football's most dramatic rivalries, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment which feud you think was the most explosive. And if you want to support the channel and help us keep making stories like this, check out our Patreon below, because in football, power never disappears, it just changes sides.